Good morning, friends. Welcome again to the Checkin In podcast. My name is Binyam. Thrilled to have you all joining in. Today is a special episode, special that we've been looking forward to for some time now. I am so thrilled to let you know we have made it to the 3 digit mark here on the Check podcast. We are at the 100th episode, so super excited to share this moment with you and to celebrate because it's worthwhile celebrating these kind of milestones. I want to say thank you guys for tuning in today, and thank you especially to those who have been tuning in for quite some time now. There are some familiar names that I have been able to get to know along the way here, and I value your guys' participation and presence here on the podcast. It's pretty stellar, pretty amazing what can happen with time together and the things that we can build in the midst of that time. So, super thrilled. Today, we are continuing on that same theme that we always do when we open our podcast, and that's in reference of saying, here are the 3 key pillars that have been part of the last 100 episodes and what we've been working on an ongoing basis. Those 3 key pillars, of course, being awareness, kindness, and happiness. And the importance, even in refreshing and rehearsing why these are important themes, has, for me, not lost its purpose. It has continued to hone in my attention and my appreciation for why this is really important for me. So that's why I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to celebrate the effects of refreshing ourselves on an ongoing daily basis. Because what we're doing here on this podcast is we're reminding ourselves on a daily basis, don't forget to invest in ourselves and who we are. Don't forget to invest in ourselves by way of the awareness piece, getting to know ourselves. And why is that important? Investing in the kindness piece. Why is it important for us to learn how to be kind to ourselves? And thirdly, why is it important to pursue happy experiences as we enjoy and learn to cope with all the other emotions that are challenging. So here we are at 100 episodes. Pretty stellar. And I am super excited about that. Good morning, little stinker. How are you? Good to see you. Some of these names are so unique and it feels like I'm calling someone or teasing someone, but I'm literally reading usernames on the podcast here. But so thankful today. I think the theme that marks me, Ollie, hello, I see my friend there on YouTube. The thing that marks for me this experience is one that is overwhelmingly with gratitude. Gratitude for think. I'm getting some celebration emojis on the chat here. Um, Gratitude is the thing that carries me in these moments. Gratitude because I'm reflecting on how amazing it is to have these kind of experiences, how amazing it is to be able to say, hey, this is something worthwhile celebrating, because as we do, it is that kind of experience that reminds me and saying, hey, this is something that doesn't happen on an ongoing basis. But when it does happen, how can we continue to reflect on the amazing joy it is to be able to account for its existence and saying, this is good, this is wonderful, this is something worthwhile celebrating. It's kind of like, if you will, the athlete who has been working hard and he has been striving and practicing when no one watches him. It's like he continues to get up early, he continues to sweat it out, he continues to push himself. No one is there to celebrate and cheer him on during those practice sessions. He had to propel himself, he had to push himself forward. And where is it all accounted for? It's all accounted for on the race. On the race, he steps up and he does what he's been doing for the last 3, 4 years in intense practicing. That is the moment of revealing everything that he's been working hard at. And in those few moments, he runs his race, he wins the race, he makes it look effortless. And everyone says, amazing. And they're all there to cheer him on. That's the moment he's been preparing for all that time. Isn't that how it is in life, though, too? There isn't such a celebration for in our experience unless we've invested some hard work and some intentional practice over the long haul. Grapefruit, I see you. How are you? Nice to have you here. Excuse me. And so along those lines, this is, I think, why it's really, really fantastic to enjoy this experience and saying, this is wonderful. This is delightful. This is worthwhile doing. And so I'm really thrilled for the opportunity. Today, I wanted to celebrate in a very special way this podcast, this 100th episode. And that is by way of saying, how can I make myself more available to you guys for some of your questions, your concerns, your ideas? I would love to be able to experience that with you guys and saying, hey, how does this look on your end as you've been walking along with me? How has this podcast influenced, impacted you? What kind of suggestions do you have along the way to continue to make this worth your while? Grateful says, I'm good. I hope you're having a great day. I am having a great day. Thank you for asking. I I want to talk a little bit also about the place that celebration plays. I was with some friends yesterday on their podcast. So some dear friends, they wanted to have me on. We were talking about a fantastic theme of male vulnerability and the importance of that topic. But one of the things that we were exploring is the place that celebrating yourself also plays. How is it that we can express and say, hey, I did something really great without coming across as, oh, you're arrogant, you're full of yourself, you're just patting yourself on the back? How can we, with all honesty, acknowledge our own selves when we've done something pretty stellar without having that sense or feeling that says, oh, I shouldn't be doing this? This doesn't sound right, right? How can we do that? And so, yeah, I think that's something really important. Now, um, in doing that, I think there's a way of acknowledging, hello, Benaquit, how are you? By the way, for all of you coming on, this is the 100th episode. We're celebrating the 100th episode, and I'm opening it up to you guys. If you have some ideas, if you have some questions you want me to address, if you have some comments, if you have some suggestions, all of that I'm taking in today in a more interactive way, like I once used to do on my live streams. So feel free to throw those in the chat. I'm still trying to figure out on my Instagram why I haven't been seeing any comments for some time. Um, but I hope, yeah, if there's anyone on the Instagram, let me know if you are able to throw comments in there because I would love to hear from you guys as well. I just haven't seen any comments popping up like they once used to on the Instagram. So I've been looking and trying to figure out if there's something that I've turned off inadvertently, maybe or not. But if you're able, send me a note there. If not, jump onto the TikTok or the YouTube live stream, and I'd love to be able to hear from you guys because I'm not sure why it turned off along the way there. But I would love to hear from you guys. Guys, on this 100th episode, I want to hear from you guys. I want to um, connect with you guys. I want to celebrate with you guys. I also want to say thank you. Thank you for those of you who have been coming along for some time on this podcast with me. And indulging in some of the things that we've been talking about growing together, I think has been a big part of it. We've really been sort of pitching in together towards something collaborative. One for me, which has been intentional. I've been very clear from the outset saying this is more so for me and my self care and how I want to evolve and grow as a person. But it just so happens that I'm bringing you guys along as well, bringing you guys along so that you can also be a part of this experience in growing and seeing how I pursue growth personally. So that's been really important for me. And so I would love to hear from you guys. But those of you on the Instagram, do let me know if there's anything going on there that doesn't let your comments come through because I don't know why it doesn't. I just did make sure that the comments are turned on. Yeah, kind of weird, but nonetheless, we will carry on. So, I was just about to say there is an importance, I believe, to being able to express gratitude, even when it is about yourself and something you've done or accomplished. This is one of those things that I think culturally we are taught not to do. It's been beaten out of our system saying, don't celebrate yourself. Don't like look cocky or anything like that. So let other people sing your praises. And I used to sign up for that perspective, but now I don't. I don't because I want to be authentic and genuine in the way I communicate and engage with others. And for me, what honesty looks like is when someone says something really nice, Once upon a time, whereas I used to say, "Oh, it's nothing. It's really not a big deal." When it could be a big deal, it is a big deal. Now I say, I'm going to acknowledge that. Thank you for being aware, and thank you for highlighting the thing that I'm doing really well. And I really appreciate that opportunity to be able to say, yeah, it is okay for me to feel good about X, Y, or Z that I'm being appreciated for. Additionally, it's also all right and totally legitimate for me to say, I'm really thrilled about this. I'm really happy about how this dynamic evolved or came about. I really think it's a fantastic thing to be able to say, hey, it's worthwhile to celebrate those moments, especially when they are something pretty significant for you. It's okay to be able to say, this is good. This is wonderful to be able to say, yeah, I did something pretty amazing. And here we are celebrating 100 episodes. That's 100 episodes. Do you realize if I did this podcast only once a week, if I only did this podcast once a week, it would take me just under 2 years, just under 2 years. If we have 52 weeks a year, it'd take me just under 2 years to get to this point of 100 episodes. But here we are, less than a year, probably like about 4 or 5 months. I started in about June, July. So July, August, September, October, November. So about 4.5 months, 4.5 months of consistently on a daily basis making this podcast available and connecting with you guys. I am so thankful for it. That's a lot of content to be talking about. But when it comes to ourselves, there's so much to discover. So much to discover. And that's why I base this whole podcast on those three pillars. Number one, the awareness piece. Such a critical place to start, friends. Such a critical place to start. I'm excited about getting to know me. I'm excited to to know me because I don't think I know everything there is to know about me. And I want to get to know me. Do you know what it's like when you meet someone that you're super excited to get to know and you want to know everything about them? Can I suggest it's a really helpful thing to start off with yourself? To start off with yourself and the excitement that comes about in saying, what makes me me? What can I discover about me that I did not know before this? How can I understand myself better and better? And as I continue to go, be aware of the way I'm changing and fluctuating over time. These are really exciting moments that we have in front of us to be able to address ourselves and say, man, I had no idea about this element or this aspect or this characteristic that I exhibit. Or, this is a really helpful insight that is going to help me now become a better version of me. These are some beautiful opportunities that we get to experience should we give the time to it. The unfortunate part is we can't do this just by osmosis. We can't do this just per chance. This happens when we intentionally carve out that space and time in our daily schedule to say, this is important. I'm going to focus my attention for the next few moments on what does it mean to be me? And that's why I love the awareness piece. One of the things that makes my life so rich, dear friends, so rich, is in the way that I get to know people. One of the most precious gifts, amazing gifts that people give to me is when they share with me something that was not aware to them beforehand. When they're like, I never knew that about myself, especially when I'm amongst friends. When I'm amongst friends, when I'm amongst friends who are interacting with each other, and as I am getting to know them, I'm the newcomer into this friend circle, and the questions that I'm asking them, and as they're talking and exploring about those questions and doing the deep dive on themselves, when their friends are saying to each other after a long friendship, I did not know this about you. This is really mind blowing. I had no idea. Those moments of discovery, oh my goodness. I just feel like I'm having like feelings candy overload because it's just so sweet to be able to see those connections deepening and uh, those awareness components in their psyche like being accentuated. It's just a magnificent thing. So, hence why I love featuring awareness as my leading pillar because I think it's so critical, so necessary, so important. And so, let me think about the last 100 episodes and where I've come with relation to the awareness piece. I would say it has been really enlightening for me. I have been able to identify the questions, the self-reflection questions that I'm like excited about. The ones I'm like, oh, I want to center more on this one here. I want to feature this one. This is amazing. And I love indulging in those questions. As I do that, I'm like, I got something to say about this. This really is important for me. And it also gets me exploring about myself. So there's those questions that I'm like, this is really important. And I am going to spend some good time on this one here. So good. I really appreciate those moments. And what that tells me is that there are some areas in my life that I'm doing really well at. Some areas that I have an answer for, some areas that I have experience in, some areas that I feel I have some benefits to share with others because I've kind of done the walk. Now I can talk the talk after doing the walk. I can be able to say, from my experience, here's how I'm perceiving this. Here's how this makes sense to me. Here's how I want to go forward in experiencing this more and more. Love, love those opportunities. It's encouraging when I come across those questions and I'm like, this is really important, but I'm glad that I'm not sitting um, with the experience like I used to have often in high school at a test where I'm like, oh crap, I see the question and I'm like, I feel so ill prepared. Do you guys know that feeling when you're sitting down for a test and you're like, I did not prepare for these questions and now I'm feeling like my pants are down, figuratively speaking, and I have no idea what to say. I like that those experiences were not replicated on so many of those questions I had. So let me show you the list of questions I would be going through. So here's what it looks like here, and if you can see, so I'm going to try and speak while I show you here. On the right hand side here, I put down the dates and which episode number it was. And I just basically worked one per section. And so that's how I went through this podcast here with all the questions. I just did a simple search for some self reflection questions. And so the categories are self reflection questions about your past, self reflection questions about your present, about your future, about your personal growth, about your well being, about improving relationships and about your goals. So there's these different categories that I would be going through in answering the questions, and I just go one by one. If I didn't like a certain question, I would skip the question and say I'll come back to that later. But as I went through them, I just started noting and cataloging on this side over here. The dates that I did set podcast, the podcast number, just as a way of knowing where to find a specific question and how to be able to cross reference it. And so, yeah, there were so many of these questions that I loved answering. I loved answering because it got me reflecting. And when I reflect, I often get to the destination of gratitude because I'm thankful for these experiences. And it gave me so much to share with you guys stories, experiences, perspectives, ideas, insights. Oh, so many beautiful things I had the opportunity to share with you guys. And I was so thankful for those opportunities. And so there were many of them, like I said, that I was excited to answer. However, there were some of those questions too that I skipped over. Like I said, if I didn't like the question, I'd be like, oh, it's a good question, but I have no idea what my answer is. I did not feel prepared to answer said question. So I would skip over that question and then I would leave it for the last. And so, as you probably know, for those of you who have been listening for some time, some of those, actually, most of the questions from the past 2, 3 weeks have been in that category where I'm like, oh man, what am I going to say about this question? Because I don't know how to answer this question quite yet. And yet, because I was committed to the process, instead of doing what I once upon a time used to be saying, I'll just ignore that and pretend it doesn't exist, I actually made myself go through those questions. I came to those questions and I said, oh, this is going to be really rough, but I need to face this question, even if it doesn't make me look smart or well put together. If it explores some vulnerable areas, I'm still committed to a process and I'm going to walk through it so that I can actually get what I need out of this experience. And so I'm really, really proud of myself. Do you see how I just appreciate myself? I'm proud of myself that I was able to do that. I was able to engage and walk into that space that enabled me to be able to say, hey, this is really important. And the surprise for me at the outset, no, at the end of said, at the end of at the end of the podcast is I'd be like, oh, I guess there is a lot that I have to learn here. There is something that I'm, yeah, there is something that's worthwhile to celebrate there. I'm just getting a comment from my dear friend Kim. She says, I can't see my Instagram messages, but 100 episodes. Congratulations. Thank you so much, Kim. So yes, there is that problem I think on the Instagram that isn't enabling me to do that. Freddie is he was there. There was a request for a live stream there. Nonetheless, thank you for letting me know that the Instagram just isn't quite doing what it ought to do. Unfortunately, and I'm not sure why, but if you're able to come onto the Instagram or sorry, the TikTok live stream or the YouTube, those live streams still facilitate the comments. But for some reason, I don't know why it doesn't allow me on Instagram. Unfortunately, thanks for letting me know, Kim. I super appreciate that, and thank you for the congrats. I so appreciate it. I'm totally gonna take it and celebrate with it. I was just talking about how in the aftermath of answering those difficult questions that I didn't quite like, um, it worked out to my benefit. I learned so much more about myself, and I was like, "Oh, I never realized that about myself. This is really good. This is really important. This is something worth investing myself in." And so that was really good. And so I learned more about myself, and I learned the benefit of kind of the hard work walking through some of those corridors that I normally would take a rain check on and say, I'm not interested. And hence why I do this podcast. It's also not only for my own benefit, but also the accountability factor. The accountability for me is where I say, I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep um, doing what I do here as a way of being faithful to myself and how I'm going to grow, and also by way of the community that I am in the midst of who are listening and engaging and participating. That's all so important for me too. So that's sort of how I perceive that importance there. Is that's two pronged dynamic there. The awareness piece, like I say, is so critically important. Do I realize how much I've grown in the last 100 podcasts? I think I do. The one, there's the resilience, there's the commitment factor, I'm going to keep going. Now, sometimes I'm going to touch on something else that may be uncomfortable for some, but it's not for me. And I'll tell you why. I'm celebrating 100 episodes for a certain reason, because that shows consistency over time. Consistency is something worthwhile celebrating. And in the midst of celebrating consistency, I'm also aware of different thresholds in which some would assess how um, some would assess how successful this podcast is. For some people, they'd be like 100 podcasts. Well, that's great, but the real question is, how many followers do you have? How many thousands or hundreds of thousands of people are listening in and consuming your content? That is their assessment of what success looks like. For my part, I'm like, yeah, that can be something worth celebrating, but I don't count it in any way as important as the consistency factor. Does that make sense? It doesn't, for me, calibrate on the same level. I would, in essence, prioritize consistency far higher than consumability, if I can make that word up. For me, I'm far more interested in the quality that's coming out of the podcast and how it's serving those, not the amount of people who are listening in. Do you know? I would argue there are plenty of podcasts or um, videos that are created that have millions of views that I count as worthless. Actually, there's not much value that they bring, and maybe for whatever reason they are like really exploding. But that's not what I sign up for. I'm signing up for the quality factor. That's what I'm looking for. So the consistency with quality is, I think, what really translates for me, regardless of what the audience number looks like. Why is that? Because sometimes you get featured, sometimes you don't. I know best of all what that looks like when you're celebrated and featured and people are like coming alongside in a way that you did not plan for. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be in those corridors where it's like, huh, this is really cool, but I didn't ask for this. And so along those lines, um, I'm aware with how seductive being popular can be. Being popular for the wrong reasons, though, I don't think is something worthwhile celebrating. Being popular for things that you may not be proud of in the like later in life, oh, that is a tough one. That's why I'm really careful about my brand. That's why I'm really careful about my legacy. It's not to say that I'm not being myself. I'm totally being myself when I share with myself with you guys, and I love that element that I get to say, here's me straight up. But I'm also very aware in saying the things that I say, the way that I present myself, it could come and bite me in the rear later on. How can I navigate? How can I go forward with awareness? There's that first piece on the podcast, the first pillar. How can I be aware of how I'm carrying myself so I have nothing to fear as I keep on going forward? For a huge part, I would say that's why I've been so successful in the long run. Over the content creation, especially on TikTok, where many would come and try to like catch me in some sort of a um, compromising perspective or dynamic. But because I knew myself as well as I did, because I was aware of me and what I was presenting and why I'm presenting, however I'm presenting, that was really important for me to be able to model how to be consistent over the long haul with quality. Consistency plus quality always trumps popularity for me. Does that make sense? And so that's what makes me really grateful again in this aftermath of why I've been enjoying this season. So, dear friends, in this 100th episode, oh, there's gratitude. And then there's also anticipation of what is to come. I said popularity doesn't translate for me, but I'll celebrate when I get maybe 1,000 followers or something like that. I'll celebrate and saying, "Hey, I really appreciate all you guys, but this is for me just a threshold in which I'm walking into that actually translates in a different way that says, you are seeing the same thing I am by way of worth, and the way that we can carry this influence further because you guys are all listening in and being a part of this is something worthwhile celebrating." Even now, like I have just a handful of you guys, just a handful, 3, 4, 5 at like just however many are tuning in, just a small handful. And yet I still keep investing. I still keep giving. I still keep bringing the best that I have. Why is that? Because the thing that I'm sharing isn't more worthwhile because I have thousands listening versus a handful. You guys who are listening are still just as precious to me, just as important in my life, just as much a priority for me as if I were doing this to hundreds of thousands of people. I still want to be the same person, regardless of what my reach is. I still want to be able to engage and connect with you guys in similar ways. I still want to honor your existence and the participation you're playing in rowing with me in this direction. That's really important for me. And so I never want to play that game that says, okay, I've moved on now. I'm no longer in the small leagues. No, I've always been in the big leagues because the things that we talk about are really that important. They are in the big league category. The content in which we're sharing, this is all really fantastic. This is all really important. So that's why I am so thrilled to be here with you guys in these moments, experiencing these experiences and being able to like together celebrate something worthwhile celebrating, and that is our continued evolution towards something better. I want to continue being your biggest fan as you meet milestones and thresholds in becoming that better version of yourself. That for me is like something super exciting. For me is like an influence that I've extended that serves you well. And then now you can go and make a real impact in your own context. I think that's a beautiful thing. Fantastic thing. Friends, can I tell you how much I appreciate you? I appreciate you guys. I've come to know you. I've come to be familiar with your usernames, and I won't forget you guys. Well, it's Friday. I will hopefully see you on Monday for our 101st episode. Thank you again for joining in on today's special broadcast. I'll talk to you on Monday. Bye for now.